Hi, everybody.
Hi.
We're thinking about giving people maybe, what time is it now?
Actually, I don't know. I don't have the
Oh,
actual time.
true. So let me check behind this. Okay, I think we're gonna wait 2 more minutes to give people a chance to arrive. We're gonna mute ourselves and be back in a little while.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. So, before we actually introduce ourselves officially, we wanted to start with a spoken word piece. One of the artists and poets who was a contributor for the second issue, called Suat Khatib, a Palestinian artist.
Wrote a poem called Prayer. Act 1, the beginning.
Fear is the absence of faith. My boy Sartre calls it bad faith. Bad faith in life and death, being one circle that expands and tightens but never breaks. Bad faith in the oppressed finding accountability, and the oppressor finding a way to die. Bad faith in comprehending the fragility of economies of war in the face of truth tellers. No more bad faith. But the body is weak, the body is tired, so the hands shake, so the lung tightens, so the tongue ties, so the eyes cry.
Cut 2, water drowns everything.
Act 2, the middle.
Faith is a heavy abstract, as heavy as Noah's Ark. All these bodies can't carry that ark.
Cut 2, one heart carrying faith. But they look at it as if it's not entitled to its courage. As if this tension does not take away its life.
Prayer break. May the eyes of those who silence the faithful never sleep in peace.
Act 3, the end.
How is your heart today? So let's start. How is your heart today? Check in with yourself. Let's arrive in this virtual space together. And welcome.
Yeah, welcome. I mean, this is really the first time that we're actually doing a presentation online on Zoom, and it is a little bit weird. Maybe some of you already done it, but we're also here to learn from you. So whenever there's you can write in the chat, and whenever you want to say something, go ahead and let's make it interactive as well, so we don't talk at you. So welcome. We're 2/3 of the team of What's Afghan Punk Rock Anyway. It's a Berlin-based magazine. And I'll let Inès first introduce herself.
Yes, thank you. I'm Inès. I'm the newest member of the team. I'm a visual artist and painter and creative educator, and I joined the team this year for the 3rd issue of the magazine. And I found out about what's Afghan Punk Rock anyway in 2018 when I read the 1st issue. And I was really amazed by it because I felt like I have found my artistic and political community. So I'm really thrilled to be part of the project and to be here today to talk about it.
Yeah, well, I'm also happy you're here to support. So I'm Amran, I'm the founder of the magazine, and I'm a writer, I'm a creative, I'm an artist, or whatever you want to call it. You know, these labels are very strange, but we're going to talk also about that a little bit more later. So in this talk, actually our aim is just very practical to present you the idea of the magazine and the experiences and developments that we sort of went through. It's not exhaustive, we're not experts, we're just talking about, you know, what we have experienced. So also there, if you have any strategies or anything to share with us, we would be really happy to hear from you as well. Why is this not moving? Oh, here we go. Okay, so just a little introduction on how it all started. It started in 2018, quite small, at a former queer community space in Wedding, Berlin. And for me, I did like sort of a residency at this space, and I suggested this project. And to me, it was very personal. It was a very personal need for community. It was a very personal need for a political space through a certain medium. And yeah, I just felt like a lot of times in my life, I was forced to think about or confront or move from my anger and exhaustion towards confronting the question of how do certain things and how me and my family and my community have experienced life have to do with structural injustice on a global scale. And you know, starting from my parents who went through war and you know, the healthcare system, care work, how it feels to not ever be fully humanized when we're portrayed in imagination. And so it was also for me a way to speak about things like mental health, things that were stigmatized, such as mental health, trauma, addiction, gender violence, homophobia, classism, ableism, and of course, all these other buzzwords that you might want to put together and that intersect. And at the same time, I wanted just a space where we can also grow, not only tell these stories, but also grow politically as a collective that doesn't really want one discourse or one narrative, but also encompasses different ones. So what happened at the end actually is that a lot of people just submitted things that really personalize and at the same time through this personalization criticize global power structures. And those are just really everyday stories of intimacy, love, our histories, forgotten histories, silence histories, and internal and external wars that we experience. And it's at the end of the day, we had topics such as I was saying before, mental health, trauma. So it was quite, I would say, for lack of a better word, heavy, but it also kind of showed that people were really needing a space for healing or start just talking, you know, because that already is a lot to do.
Exactly.
And it was all sort of also connected to our idea of belonging, home, relationship to ourselves, and how we project the relationship to ourselves onto each other. And maybe we can just give you a quick, you know, go through.
Yeah. And how the first issue looked like.
Yeah, exactly. So you see this, the cover is really iconic. I find it very iconic, to be honest, by the artist Grimes.
It's really punk rock.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
Definitely. Okay. This is the first issue. Yeah, and here we had a lot of stories about mental health, but it also means, for instance, a lot of things that also had to do directly with identities, you know, like what does it mean to be Afghan? You know, we have someone talking about being an Afghan, so to say. Let me just quickly give you a chance also to look through it. Our relationships with our parents, you know, dysfunction, whatever dysfunction means.
Mental illness also.
Yeah. I really like the way that Mina, the author, wrote about mental health, because here, in the quote that she puts in here, I think it's really fitting. She says, "We proudly claim the cultural heritage of Ibn Sina, Farabi, Rumi, Balkhi, and Ghazali. As part of their studies, the polymath scholars have also devoted themselves to the doctrine of the soul. How are we supposed to claim this heritage?" Yeah, and also kind of connecting spirituality at the same time. Yeah, a connection to a place called home, like Vatan, that many of us never really knew. We don't really have a connection with, and that doesn't really exist in the way that it might have existed in our parents' or grandparents' ideas.
Yeah, and a craving for belonging to that place or feeling.
Yeah. This one is really funny. I mean, obviously you also gotta laugh, and it's also important to like see ourselves not as people who just create, all that they create is being turned into trauma, but we're full human beings and our full humanity. And so to also just laugh about things such as, wait, let me show you this comic. This is one of my favorites by Vida Tanvir, who has also been a long time person who has been with us from the beginning. She's incredibly talented. Yeah, and just to also deal with these issues with a little bit of humor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this one because it kind of takes away. So this is Amber. We did an interview with Amber Gari, and they are a makeup artist. And it was really just interesting to see talking about who is or what is lovable, or who is lovable, and who do we perceive as lovable, what type of bodies, what kind of norms do we have to abide by in order to be perceived as lovable. And I felt that Amber really broke that in a really beautiful way down for us. Yeah. Okay. Whoops. Oh. Okay. So yeah, that was just a sneak peek into the first issue, and it's a little bit weird looking back, because I feel like I literally had no idea what I was doing back then. I was not skilled enough in designs. I just used whatever was available for free and just quickly put things together so it just is together. Yeah. And that was a little bit different in the second issue. So
yeah, the second issue came out in 2019, so we do annual issues, and the second issue evolved around the topic of love, which was really, really interesting, because we moved from topics like trauma and pain and these struggles to like love and intimacy, but not only that, also we encourage people to submit anything they felt urgent to share. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was just giving the room to not only speak about specifically love and intimacy that was given, but also if people are allowed to submit what gives them a sense of urgency. The idea behind it was for us to be able to put it together in a way that it would make a collective sense, so to say. I'm not talking about a collective one voice, but more about things that actually put a red thread to it. And that was really interesting because in the first issue, we had so many people, so many Afghans, or actually people who had a connection to the Afghan identity or whatsoever. And then in the second issue, we had a lot of non-Afghans joining us simply because we're touching upon, you know, structural struggles. We're talking about a lot of things that you don't have to be Afghan. It's not about the Afghan identity here. I feel that that's how people were able to relate, and that's how we got a lot of submission by people who were actually relating to it from a different angle, but would join our struggle.
Yeah, exactly. When I read the first issue, I could totally relate, and I felt like that people sharing their stories really encouraged me to tell my story and to submit something, because it felt like a safer space in a sense. Mm-hmm. Yes, and it's really beautiful to watch the community grow, and to see that people are joining us from different movements and from all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely, from all over the world, but also just critical voices. Basically, it's just all critical voices and personal stories, but it's also for us a chance to create a wider space. So for the second issue, to create a wider space to envision or imagine ourselves. So also to move more with the, to use more the medium of visual art, for instance, to kind of break also this hierarchy of that we live in the Western society, which is the written word, or even not only the written word, but even beyond that, the word and the strength of the word holds like a monopoly in communication and knowledge and how we transfer knowledge. And there are so many other ways to do that. So we also wanted to move away from that and have more visual space. That's why it's nice to have Inès there, because she's a visual artist and kind of lead us more into directions of how we tell stories.
Yeah, so we move away from this text-centric idea of how a magazine should look like. So it's not that illustrations should accompany text, but stand for themselves in a way too. So yeah, and it's really beautiful to learn that through the process also.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, in a little bit, I'm also going to give you a sneak peek of the love issue. But it was just interesting to see while we were curating it and editing it, to see that people were speaking about their own desires of self-love and wanting personal autonomy, to moving into what love and intimacy means to people in terms of collective autonomy, or the desire for collective autonomy and freedom and liberation. And it just came together like that, but we will see that in a little bit. So for issue 2, we had no funding whatsoever. So we were presented with a new idea that I'm hoping that some people who listen actually have strategies. If you have strategies that you would like to share with us, please do so. But we had to think about what is feminist organizing. If you want to create a system that is relatively outside of capitalist functioning, I mean, no one is outside of capitalist functioning. I mean, that is very much clear. But what are ways in which that can be practically done? And that meant we had to rethink what a resource is, for instance.
Yeah, so we try to move away from the notion that only money is a resource. So we basically thought about we had to rethink resources. So we tried to reach out to people friends or community members who, for instance, work in IT or work as graphic designers, or people who work as do organizational stuff, and we try to reach out to them and ask for help, for instance, to get software we don't have access to, or ask them like how we could optimize our process and how we can deal with design and technology and all that stuff, and we try to find a way around the system.
Yeah, let's put it that way. This is going to be streamed on YouTube. I don't know if any of you are cops, but the thing is that also, exactly like Inés was saying, is that rethinking resources, right? Okay, so we had the first issue, and then we had the second issue, and people were already thinking, okay, we want this to continue because we want to make this happen. So you have to think about like, we had to think about community work in terms of, okay, so maybe we have a friend who's a hacker or
works in IT,
or works in IT,
or can put you up with a secure like computer system so you can get access to stuff that you won't actually be able to access.
Exactly. Or people who know how to deal with certain financial matters in a way that will eventually benefit you, if you know what I'm hinting at. So it is just about
rethinking resources.
Rethinking resources.
Yeah. And also reach out for help, like ask people, like ask people for help, community members and friends. And if you start a project, you don't necessarily need to ask people who did something similar. If you can, that's nice too. But you can think about like, who is in your community? What do your friends do? Everybody has certain resources, and how can we put them together to realize the project we want to do?
Yeah, and that is also thinking critically in terms of what is gender also, like what is the gendered labor division, or how do we view labor in a very gendered way, and what value and what labor do we give to certain things, like even if you have, on a very practical sense, in organizing, it is important that when you have been working for a long day and someone provides food or cooks food, that is just as valuable of labor that you put into as someone who works in IT, you know what I mean? So
exactly, or to ask a friend to remind you every day to do your, I don't know, body work, or to do the stuff you need to care for your mental health, for instance, is as valuable as other resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let me say something about disrupting the institutional ideas of art and the meaning of art resistance. So I think disrupting the institutional ideas of art itself is an act of art resistance. So if we move away from the notion that art has to be a certain way, a magazine has to look a certain way, so we want to have no restrictions whatsoever and no barriers that come like from institution or from the elitist thinking, and that raises the question like, who is allowed to be a part of the art sphere. And this magazine was founded, as Armeghan said in the beginning, because there was no space for what she and the collective wanted to say and wanted to express. So I think the magazine itself is a kind of act of art resistance too. And it also disrupts the notion of you need an art education or any education whatsoever to be able to be part of the art sphere and to practice art actually. And it also raises the questions like, who decides which artistic expression or output is meaningful or valuable, and which creations are allowed to be seen or to be loved. And we kind of come from the notion that art is supposed to be from the people, for the people, and there shouldn't be any barriers in between. And so...
But also you are an art educator.
Exactly. So. I work with children, and it's really interesting to see how these institutional ideas of what art is supposed to be are internalized in a very, very young age. So most of the children I know stop painting or drawing when they are at the age of 8, and writing also. So any creative output or expression. Yeah. Because they think they're not good enough, or what they do is not good enough. And they stop basically because they think they cannot draw noses or hands in a realistic way. And so I teach comics which really overcomes that idea. And we want to encourage people who wouldn't call themselves artists, or might not work as freelance writers or artists whatsoever, and to encourage them to create and to let their what they want to express what they want to say and what they want to tell, and want to encourage the idea that everybody is creative in a way. And and we want to give them space to show these creations, and to play, also to be playful. And we think art is play, and everybody loves to play, and everybody should be allowed to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. Yeah. And then, I mean, in a way, you're realist when you play, and you allow yourself also to kind of break out of these capitalist notions of what it means to create something that needs to be perfect, to also break out of these. If you create something, it needs to be the ultimate thing that needs to have some production value. But yeah, in the end of the day, what is also really nice, I'm gonna show you the second issue, but it's also about creating a digital archive or a sort of documentation of how people experience love, or how a specific community with specific desires experience love. Let me show you. Oh yeah. Okay, so this is it was also really nice because we were talking before about how you think about gender and labor, and that's why having for the love issue something that takes place in a kitchen, something that also portrays love not only as something that is romantic, but breaking the idea, queering it, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that was just a really beautiful idea.
Yeah, the kitchen can be a place of love too. So
exactly, yeah, it's a place of care and nourishment
and intimacy for many people. So,
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so with this issue, it was kind of interesting. Let me show you. So this was Suhat, the poem that we presented before. I'm gonna go through that. So in the first part, people were really turning the question of love more inwards and looking into exploring the perceptions of the self, exploring our bodies, the spiritual, the mind. Show you. Yeah, also this text, for instance, is a really vulnerable, beautiful text about addiction or sexual violence. Oops, sorry, that was too quick. But yeah, in the second part, we look at, you know, our relationship to others, our lovers, possibly, or whatever you want to call it, different types of intimacy that are, you know, explored through heartbreak, taking risk for love, but also platonic love.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I mean, these things don't exist in binaries anyway, but
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, and lastly, we were moving from the inside to the outside, so to say, because we were looking into looking kind of outward, of envisioning a collective sense of love, for freedom, liberation, a call for solidarity with each other. I feel like I'm going through this too quick. I mean,
a little bit maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you guys wanted, just send us an email. If you're part of a collective, by the way, we forgot to say that, if you're part of a collective or you work for an organization or whatever, you can just send us an email and we'll give you access to it. That's it. Okay. Hey. Hey.
Okay, let's move on to the let's move on to the third issue of this year.
Coming November.
Yeah, it's coming out next month, and we were like really excited to have it printed soon.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really excited. I mean, it's mostly about, we wanted to take a step further into envisioning our futures or having like control. I think like if you feel like you're mostly in control, I really fucking hate to say that, this whole thing about like in these times, but we know exactly who actually struggled the most in these times. There were not people who were had time to bake banana bread, you know, like really it has been a fucking tough year. And just to give us space to envision yourselves and other futurism, you know, or as they exist, and have also dreams and hopes and you know, fears as well, of course, also fears, but just to put the attention on something that gives you at the end of the day also empowerment. And then one thing we really also decide to take another step further is to disrupt standard language, to also really go into, to even make that punk, you know, to allow language, or to really acknowledge that language also carries power structures. I mean, everyone knows that, right? We know how it has been used historically, but even when it comes to German language, for instance, when I think about myself, I mean, you're a linguist, like you studied that, but maybe you can say more about that in a little bit. But I feel like I could never speak German because I thought that my German is not good enough. There's a certain way how you're supposed to read and write. And if you write beautiful lyrical things, they're beautiful and seen as original and creative as long as they abide by certain standards. And we know what these standards are. And
so as you said, language and especially the standard form of a language carries a power structure because it's seen like it's seen as the best version of the language. So the standard language of one language is like the best version of it. And in written language, institutions tell us to use this standard language, or the other ones are like not allowed to be printed even. And what did that mean for us in the process of editing? So we wanted to disrupt this notion and to make it punk and to let written text be as they are, and just do justice by the story. For instance, I had a French text that I edited, and it was written in an informal way. Maybe I can describe it as the way we would write in chat. So it would be written the way we talk, and I left it that way because I find it really beautiful. It documents how we use language creatively, and that it is as meaningful as the written standard form, and that we didn't want to police that into some norm also.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And we will show you a little bit of an inside, just to also say we're gonna have also a website by next year in order to make things a little bit more accessible. And also, since we're started this project, we are learning a lot. So I feel like we're still not very accessible. I think there's still like some issues that we really reproduce and that we probably are not doing right. I mean, thank God this time we also have like a cooperation with GLAD, who are really amazing and who really feel the punk rock spirit as well in what we're doing and fully support that. And
so we're really allowed to do whatever we want. This is really
Yeah.
beautiful. So no restrictions whatsoever, and it felt like we were supported literally.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe we can just like take a look at it. Also, it would be nice if we could hear from you if you feel up for it, or even if you just want to write us an email about strategies that you use in your organizing with regards to art resistance.
So this is a sneak peek into the third issue, maybe setting the mood for the first part of the upcoming issue. It's a little bit dreamy and hopeful and utopic.
Yeah, it's dreamy, hopeful. There's lightness, there's play as well, innocence, also like future. There's a child there, and this is a little bit more darker. This is, I think the first one is called Dystopian Futures. And the right one, actually, I'm not sure if you can read it, but it says breaking news, poets are on fire. And that seems to be really the theme.
Yeah, that's the theme of the second part of the third issue. Yeah, it's more about and which realities we face and strategies we have to navigate through these realities.
Yeah, exactly. Like the earthly matters of something, as opposed to, you saw the picture before, which is more like, what do we dream of? Where are we when we are in our heads and imagining a space? And the second one is bringing us a little bit closer to what the actual struggles is. But nevertheless, even though people speak about their struggles, there's always, I feel like, a collective healing element at the end, which was also really interesting for us to see. Yeah.
And this is the mood for the third and last part of the upcoming magazine. It's a little bit more about cosmic chaos and
Okay, never mind. Sorry,
Du hast dein Message noch nicht eingerichtet.
Okay, so that was Siri talking to me. This is very weird. Anyways, you go ahead.
So this is about like cosmic chaos and how we imagine the future in a kind of also we're dealing with artificial intelligence a little bit, as you can see, has a robot hand, and we're really thrilled to bring out the magazine next month.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's it so far from us. We would like to hear from you, of course, if you feel like it, or if you have questions.
So if you have any questions, just
you can write in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, I think we're gonna wait 2 minutes.
Yes.
And then we're also off.
Yeah, and you can.
Oh yeah, of course. Hold on. Let me send it into the chat right now.
We're happy to hear about like comments and strategies you use. So whatever comes up to your mind.
Wait, why is it not? And also follow us on Instagram.
Yeah, we're gonna write down the Insta handle, Afghan Punk Zine.
Okay, so I think there's no more questions. Probably, I mean, most people are gonna watch the live stream, the video later on. Yeah. So thank you for listening.
Okay, so we just read Q&A.
What would be dream collaboration sharing? A dream collaboration sharing of resources? This is an interesting. No, it's not too late. We can still answer that.
Yeah, of course.
Do you have a
dream collaboration?
I don't think I ever thought about it, to be honest. So that's a good question.
So my dream collabo would be with children, actually. I think it would be really nice to bring the voices of children into the magazine, or like give them space to say what I want to say. Yeah, this would be like really interesting and really futuristic also.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the moment we also have like a lot of the generations are super mixed. Like we have people who are 16 who collaborate, and we have people who are 40, 50. So there is like a generational thing, but like actual kids, I think it's a little bit different, definitely.
Exactly. It'd be cool to have them on board too.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of sharing resources, obviously it's really hard if you want to be self-organized and if you want to maintain your independence. It is always, I don't know. It's a difficult question. I think I would have to think about that, but probably any collective that is also self-organized. Any other questions
or comments?
Okay. All right. So thank you so much for listening
and watching.
And have a wonderful evening.
And check out the magazine that's coming out next month.
Bye.